Hello and welcome to the practice plan assignment. What I wanted to do is just make this little short video to kind of walk you through the instructions of what we're doing here and what the expectations are. So I've given you some in-depth instructions here, but basically the practice plan um, assignment here is broken down into three parts. We've got our identifying our person, task, and setting, and our skill setting description here. We've got our major sections here, and then the last part is actually building a practice plan for a 2-hour practice. So the first part, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be identifying, our person task setting. Who are we working with? What tasks are we doing? And what setting are we doing it in? So when you're building this here, it's going to behoove you to be very specific as possible in here. So instead of, saying, hey, this is going to be a basketball practice, saying this is going to be, a early season um, high school basketball practice that we're working with freshmen, high school freshman basketball practice early season. So being, more specific here is going to help you when you're, deciding which of these tools to use over here. So as you move into this major section down here, you have these, what you have here is you have these different major sections, and then this list where you're going to choose a topic, one or two topics within each of these sections to speak to the impact on your instructional decision that this topic would have. So for example, if you go down to the next page down here, we have these big checklists, and you'll notice that each one of these um, highlighted areas is the major section, right? So we've got learner characteristics, task characteristics, target context, goals of learning. Those are all of these things that are listed right here. So the first one is, diagnosing what the learning situation is going to be. So who are we working with? What are we doing? Where are we doing this? Kind of that person task setting, right? So that's why it's going to be important for you to identify this with as much detail as you can, so that when you move on over here, it helps you to decide which topics that I want to speak to. As you move into this other one, this is the checklist for designing our learning experience. So this is where we're going to use those tools that we talked about in class to build a good learning experience within our practice. These are things that we're going to focus on, things like, using the varied and random practice schedules, and doing things like giving, what kind of feedback schedules are we going to give, or, are we going to build in mental practice into our practice, things like that. So for each one of these sections, you're going to choose a topic or two to talk about up here. You'll list that topic in this section and then talk about how what the impact would be on the instructional decision. So for example, let's take our learner characteristics as an example. So with our learner characteristics, we have all these different characteristics we can focus on. And so let's say we're going to talk about a stage of learning. So what we'll do over here is we'll list in our topic as stages of learning. And depending on the stage of learning of our athlete, it's going to impact how we make some decisions on how we're going to instruct that particular skill, right? So if we have, novice learners that have never done this skill before, we're going to have to spend significant amounts of time trying to develop that program. Whereas if I have, more expert type of or more experienced type of learners, then maybe we've already developed that program, and now we're going to be working on parameterizing that program. So that's going to impact, our instructional decisions. If we have, some people that are learning the program for the first time and early learning, perhaps that block type of practice might be more appropriate to try to develop that program. Whereas if we're talking about parameterization, we know that we need to do more random practice to take advantage of the learning effect of random practice, right? So that's just one example here. So you'll do that for each one of these. Pick a topic or two and speak to how they'll impact your instructional decisions. Once you have all these tools here, you're going to have a nice gathering of tools that you can put into your practice plan down here at the bottom. So the last part, or the third part you're going to do here, is you're going to actually put forward a 2-hour practice. So within this 2-hour practice, you're going to account for every minute within practice. So again, you're going to label your person task setting up here. What sport are we doing? What's the level of athletics? So we'll show you an example here in a second. You'll talk about your goals and your objectives that you're going to have here. Keep in mind that for each goal and objective here, we should see an activity that goes to this goal or objective here. So if we're, talking about a basketball practice, for example, and one of our objectives is to improve our shooting, we should have activities down here that deals with shooting, right? So we want our goals or objectives for practice to guide what our practice is doing. Um, within these activities, you want to be detailed so we know what we're doing here. And then within this comments section, this is when you're going to make comments to yourself about, what different tools am I using? What are some things I want to focus on within that particular activity and practice? Um, once you make these will be all of your different tools that you'll be using. Down here, uh, you'll have an opportunity to talk about these tools in more detail. So what was the tool that I use, and why was I using, or what was the rationale for using this tool item? So I gave you an example for this part down here of a basketball practice. So I chose to do a basketball practice, and my level of athletes was high school freshmen. And this was a mid-season practice, and our goals or objectives were to improve our rebounding, improve free throw shooting, improve shooting. So when I come down here to my activities, you'll notice that I have activities that are working on shooting and working on rebounding, right? And so down here, I have every minute of my practice laid out here, including our break times. You want to make sure that you build in break times within here. And remember that break times are a good opportunity to take advantage of the downtime. These are times when you can use, mental practice type things. It's time that you can give feedback. It's time where you can give instructions, things like that, right? So you want to speak to every minute, or every minute should be accounted for. You should have your activity. Within the activity, there should be some detail of what you're doing within the activity, and then comments of what we're going to be doing here. So right here, I'm using some external focus cues in this activity. Here, I have a reminder to take advantage of the specificity of practice principle by going game speed during our pregame routine, and a bunch of other tools I'm using down here. You'll notice that each one of these tools that I've listed here is again listed in the toolbox items along with a rationale for why I'm using that item. So for an example, for the specificity of training principle I'm using here in this pregame routine, and then again in our scrimmage, we are emphasizing the speed of the drill to make it more game speed to take advantage of that specificity of training principle. You can see the same thing, external focus of attention. We're trying to take advantage of the learning benefits of this type of focus. And then we've got, our blocked and random practice, all this stuff in here. So please take a look at the example before starting your practice so you can see what exactly we're looking for in here. So your finished product should have a specifically detailed person task setting description for your skill setting. You should have a bunch of topics and their impacts on their instructional design throughout here, and then your full 2-hour practice. Feel free to choose whatever you want to do for your practice. If it's more appropriate to have a shorter timeline, so for folks maybe that are going to be doing like a physical therapy session for their example, 2 hours might not be appropriate. So what you'll do in that case is do 2 1-hour sessions in order to account for those 2 hours. All right. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to reading your guys' practice plans. Thank you.